Joining us live in studio is Lucky Tekisho, Transform RSA Deputy President, Professor Peri Hanyane, political analyst. He's a professor with the University of the Northwest, and Oliver Dixon, a political commentator and analyst. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. I almost said Happy Women's Day, but
Happy Women's Day to you.
Yeah, hinted. You know, I was trying to cue you, but just looking at Zuma's strength, of course, other analysts are saying he is at his weakest, considering that so many of the ANC MPs voted against him. Your view, Tekisho? We'll start with seniority.
Okay, no problem. I think it might not be correct to think that his position within the ANC has weakened, because firstly, the position of the ANC, NEC, which of course is very powerful within, has been quite clear, and he has been taken to say, no, indeed, this is the position. We don't vote against our president. But more so, what is important is that the opposition are the people that brought this thing. So there was no way politically that the ANC could have agreed with. But the challenge is there. The challenge is a number of people have voted with the opposition. And what do the ANC do now? Our view is very clear to say we do not think the ANC must rush this thing in saying that now they must hand these people and be able to deal with them. But of course, there are still challenges, because if they don't deal with the matter, then it means it must recur. Because if it doesn't win this one, they are going to come with dissolution, and still they'll have this challenge of numbers. So they'll have to deal with this matter as quick as possible.
Yeah, and as well, the ANC, by its own admission, saying that the enemy is within, and not, you know, the ANC would implode before external factors can destroy the party, as it were. But if you look at the numbers, 249 ANC members minus the 198 that voted, that leaves you with a deficit of 51 members. Okay, at the moment we're looking at 35 to 45 that may have voted with the opposition. It suggests that the remedial actions that, you know, regarding state of capture, the institution of a judicial inquiry, all of the responses from the NEC did not satisfy these members. Or do you think there's something more sinister, like inducement of members to vote against its party?
So I don't think we should go as far as speculating that just yet. Let's wait for an evidentiary body before we make that sort of speculations. But I think that's less important to ask. Do you think the opposition may have bribed certain members within the ANC caucus? I think that's the least important question. The important question then is, why did those, if that was the case, why did those members feel comfortable taking those bribes? That's the first question. And importantly, if it's not the case, why is it that Jacob Zuma is facing so much dissent within the ANC? And is that dissent, and what are the issues that bring about that dissent? And we need to go directly to fixing that issues. I think Jackson Mthembu was entirely correct to say, let's not witch hunt, let's solve the issues. And I think that's the direction that we need to take.
Yeah, I mean, you're quite right that to question the motive to vote on your own conscience clearly means that you're uncomfortable, or there's certain issues that have not been resolved within the party, or it could be, as I mentioned, that it could be a more sinister approach to it. Your view with what Zuma's position is currently leading up to the elective conference, does he stay for 2019, as we heard, as the country's president, or is there a possibility of his recall?
No, I think that what may happen is that if Zuma is supporting, and perhaps let me come up with this narrative, and I think you will help me with this narrative. Remember, the party has a view on Zuma. And the first general secretary of the party marched with the opposition outside. Now, what we need to look at, and we must be frank, we must not be afraid to raise these issues, to say, because of the number that is there, you know, is there a possibility perhaps that they might have spoken to their members within parliament to take a different decision? But of course, it's speculations, as correctly stated. Yeah. But it's something that can be followed to say, because they were outside, does it make sense when they're outside and at the same time inform their members to say, no, you must vote correctly? We don't know. But we think it's about time that this must also be engaged. They need to have a conversation with the party to resolve this, because what we think is that the party has not been speaking to the ANC for some time. And perhaps they might be angry and this matter had not been resolved. Can they meet and resolve some of these issues so that they must either agree or disagree, but they must meet so that they must be able to resolve some of these issues.
Yeah. Professor Barry Hanyane, good evening to you and thanks so much for joining us. Are the other defectors a force to be reckoned with, considering many of them were very vociferous in support of Jacob Zuma in the lead up to Polokwane?
Good evening, Cindy. Good evening to your panelists there and, of course, your viewers. Look, I think what happened yesterday should get the ANC, especially the leadership, very worried. Quite rightly, it's for the first time that they managed to bag, that is the opposition side, managed to bag ANC votes. And one would then argue that those votes are crucial votes. We don't know the names behind the votes. I don't think the ANC will ever get to know those names. But if, of course, some of the names come from the very executive body of government, in this instance cabinet, surely Mr. Zuma should be worried as to, amongst others, how will the executive decisions be taken. And worst case scenario, this might come back to haunt him and his section come December's conference in terms of his own personal choice of his successor. On the other hand, it reflects on the kind of factionalism within the ANC itself. I don't know whether they will have time and the energy and individuals who will take the bull by the horns and make sure that all issues internally that must be resolved can be resolved, in particular before the conference in December. So yes, it reflects the kind of challenges within the organization. I don't think that the ANC, NEC in particular, can sit back and celebrate the victory that they got yesterday.
All right, stay on the line, please, Professor Hanyane. We'll continue with our studio panelists. Do you think the resentment towards Jacob Zuma was more compelling for those that voted with the opposition than the threat of dislodging the ANC from running the country?
No, look, I think on the face of it, this vote of no confidence was going to fail. And that's the sort of analysis I've been making the entire time. The dissent within the ANC against Jacob Zuma is not strong enough for him to go, and we have evidence of that. The vote of no confidence failed. But I don't think that it necessarily means that the members of parliament who voted in favor of the vote of no confidence that belong on the ANC caucus necessarily agree with the opposition. Right? So they may agree on this issue that Jacob Zuma may go, but they may disagree for different reasons. And it's important to explore what those reasons actually are. The DA has their own motives and reasons. I strongly don't agree that those reasons are always good enough, because I think those reasons are myopic in the sense that it doesn't cover the full spectrum of what causes the economic downfall in South Africa. They need to go have a conversation with their donors. They need to have a conversation with corporate South Africa as to what their culpability is within the downfall of South Africa's economy. Within the ANC, however, the disagreement can be different. And I think, and I agree with Lucky, the party now needs to refocus and re-strategize and say, what do we do now to remedy the dissent? I think now it's very easy to go to people like Dr. Makosi Khoza and say, okay, look, you lost. But what do you think, anything short of removing Jacob Zuma, which you lost on, should we do to strengthen the party? And I think she'll be more welcoming in such a conversation, right? I think, and there's 35 of them, we may or may not know who they are, but I think that conversation is important to have with the entire ANC caucus, all 249 members.
Yeah, but with the factionalism and infighting that we've seen, do you think there is an environment where the defectors would be welcome and even feel at liberty to express still their disdain or disregard for President Zuma's leadership?
Yeah, I think if nothing is going to happen, of course there will be a challenge. But you see, what the challenge is currently is that there are those, it's factions that plays itself out again. We must be honest with this. Those that might not have voted for him were expecting a particular outcome in order to be able to deal with collapse, perhaps the parliament and government, so that they must be able to be on par with regard to their own factional battles within the ANC going towards the December conference. Now, what makes the president more powerful is because he has succeeded, his faction is going to be more stronger because he will utilize his position as the president of the ANC as well as the president of government to be able to ensure that his people that are supporting his candidate must be able to ensure that they happen. Now, the problem that we have as Transform RSA is that those that have lost has not given up. They still have the challenge and they might still do something. That's why it's important for the ANC and NEC to sit down, strategize, ensure that they resolve this matter. If they don't resolve this matter will never be resolved until people are frank and open to say, we have done this thing and we feel that we have done it because of the following reasons. Can we sit down and talk about it?
I mean, we know it's documented the opposition's relentless attempts at unseating President Zuma, but I don't think Professor Hanyani, he was aware to the extent of his own party members, their dissatisfaction with his administration, and whether there's more ominous environment lurking for President Zuma's remaining term.
No, look, Cindy, I think he is aware. I have no doubt about that. Surely he has been advised. Surely he does read newspapers. So outside of him playing the role of the presidency, surely he is an ordinary citizen. So he does interact with the kinds of anecdotes, the kinds of issues that are in the public. And one would argue that his own advisors would give him advice on these issues. What is an issue again is that you have the broad church movement within the ANC. You have your liberal Democrats. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those liberal Democrats actually voted against him because they don't necessarily see his leadership as the one that should take the ANC forward. Instead, they want to put the party first, a party that seeks to espouse virtues and principles of integrity, of transparency, of good governance. But then on the other hand, you have his support base, which comes from the leftist side of the party itself, which come what may, are somewhat aware of the kinds of strategies that might be used by the opposition to get rid of the president out of the office. So the balance of forces from an ideological position must also be looked at. Again, I am not of the opinion that this win will actually augur well for his faction come December. Surely, Mr. Ramaphosa's candidacy may throw some weight to counter that faction in terms of gaining the upper hand come December this year.
Mr. Dixon, just in the numbers as well, is this a show of strength or rather the entrenchment of Jacob Zuma within the ANC, or would you also agree that it was a very narrow, close shave in terms of how this could have gone?
And this is where I want to disagree with Lucky. I don't think there was a victory for Jacob Zuma here. I don't think there was a victory for the ANC, and neither do I think there was a victory for the opposition. There was a victory for no one in this instance, because if we realistically look at the numbers, only 198 members voted for Jacob Zuma, in defense of Jacob Zuma. That's less than the entire National Assembly. So that means Jacob Zuma doesn't enjoy majority support in the National Assembly. That's going to make legislative processes very difficult. That's going to make debates in Parliament that are important for policy construction incredibly difficult. So there's no victory there. So then the focus needs to go back to how do you rebuild the organization. And Gwede Mantashe spoke quite a lot about that before the policy conference in Nazareth. There was a lot of talk about that, but very little came out as to what the procedural steps will be in terms of rebuilding the party. I think it's important now for Jacob Zuma himself to come and speak on this. I think the only thing Jacob Zuma enjoys here is to say within his own party he enjoys support, contrary to what the opposition has been preaching when they were campaigning for this secret ballot vote. Because the opposition was very confident they'd win with this thing. Now they haven't won. It means that there are enough people that believe Jacob Zuma should remain the leader. But those people now have a burden on themselves to say, with Jacob Zuma, how are we rebuilding this organization heading into 2019? Because this is an indication that Jacob Zuma's faction, and I don't want to have that conversation, may lose 2019, but importantly, that the ANC may lose the entire election. Sorry, Jacob Zuma's faction in December, but the ANC collectively may lose 2019, right? If the ANC slips anything below 50% in the general election, it means that the opposition can gang up against them, and we may have a president like Musi Maimane coming from that ranks.
Yeah. Is it that clear choice to make, Zuma or the national elections 2019?
No, I think that the reason why I'm saying that he has been strengthened is precisely because of the fact that the ANC has to wake up now. It has happened. It must wake up. It must ensure that it have serious conversation with those that have problems with how the ANC is run, you know. And after that, then they will be able to have some sense to say what are the challenges. And if they are in a position to resolve the challenges, they will do that. But if they are not in a position to resolve the challenges, but they will know at least to say we have these challenges, and they will also know how to deal with those challenges moving forward. They have a number of ways to deal with the challenges. They can recall, they can change, they can say, okay, let's resolve, go back. They have a number of ways. The NEC can be able to take whatever decision that suits them, and that's take the
But it doesn't mean
forward.
that decision will necessarily receive acceptance within the party. We know about the reshuffle, with some top leaders still questioning why the cabinet reshuffle had to take place in the first place.
Yeah, but democracy, centralism is very clear. You know, if we discuss, me and Dixon and somebody else, and 2 into 1, we agree, me and you and Dixon is not agreeing, what happens is that the two people's view prevailed. So they will have to discuss these things and ultimately agree to say what is the way forward. And the majority of those that agree is the resolution that needs to be taken.
Yeah, and
Professor, others must follow.
Professor Hanyane, maybe that is the hurdle that the party finds itself in, this democratic centralism, that it doesn't mean consensus across the board. It does mean that the majority voice would be loudest. We've seen recently where criticism of even former presidents, some even saying we've made a mistake in appointing this one or supporting this one. How does the party resolve that going into 2019?
Cindy, this is one of the biggest challenges that the ANC will have to face going forward. I have no doubt about that. Worst case scenario is that you are seated here with factions that continue once to be in dominance, wants to undermine the voices other than theirs, and this in itself it's a recipe for disaster for the ANC. Look at the role that the veterans now have, or ought to enjoy going forward. How do you go back and embrace them and say, look, you are part of the ANC is your home, your voice is critical, come back home, let's sit down and let's have a discussion over the kinds of differences that might exist or are there already. And one of the challenging issues is that a lot of these factions point a finger at the ANC president, that remove him out of the seat, then we can sit down and talk. Remove him out of the seat, then we can take the ANC that we know to be the ANC back to what it used to be. Certain values must be espoused. Certain values must be promoted. Who will rise up to the occasion and take that leadership and provide some measure of trajectory in which the ANC ought to take if it needs to be a force to be reckoned in the next coming few years? But
have they done, Professor Nyana, stay on the line, have they done enough in responding to the question of whether the ANC has the country's interest at heart and not necessarily party politics?
Sure, no one knows. It's speculative at this stage. I think the only way the ANC would know is if they spend a whole lot of money going across the country and polling their supporters, which would be most of the country. That's the only way they can tell whether they're still retaining. And they need to do it themselves in the most unbiased way possible, because if you're going to appoint another organization to do it, there's biases that play into that. So that's the only way we can determine that. Failure of that, I think, we then need to support by some margin the opposition's call to dissolve parliament, because that means now we're going to a general elections. That means you and I can decide whether we still have confidence and faith in the ANC under Jacob Zuma's leadership. Anything short of that, I think, is speculative, because you and I can have our own views, but we don't share the lived realities of most South Africans and how they view what the government has done for them.
Yeah, maybe a referendum. I don't know if we're ready for an election.
Yeah, we're not. Maybe a referendum may be valuable. It's just expensive to run, and I don't think we should be spending money on that just yet.
Okay, just closing comments, Tekisho.
Yeah, it's just that the ANC might have an idea because they have branches all over the country. They interact with people. Yes, some of these other branches are not necessarily that viable, but they have an idea to say the support is there. But the problem is, what is currently happening is this urbanization of all of us that speaks aloud, that knows social media and all of those things.
Clever blacks.
Well, yes, no, I don't want to say clever blacks, but what I mean is that the people on the ground might have a different view, and we don't know. And we keep on saying the majority of people have a problem with Zuma. It might not be the truth because it's not researched. So what we need to do, the referendum might be a way to deal with it. But I still maintain that the ANC is the ANC that is still supported by the majority of the people currently as we speak.
Zuma stronger or weaker?
I think it's stronger.
Okay. I think Zuma stronger, ANC weaker, opposition unchanged.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much. Lucky Tekisho is Deputy President of Transform RSA, and Oliver Dixon is a political commentator and analyst. Barry Hanyani, Professor Barry Hanyani is a professor with the University of the Northwest, joining us. He's a political analyst as well. We'll take a quick ad break. Thanks for staying with us.